tell me a little bit more about e-commerce tech. Like what size e-commerce stores do you generally work with and what platforms do they operate on?
Yeah, the platform itself is really designed for all merchants, but our favorite merchants to work with are growth stage merchants, brands doing between 1 million and 10 million a year in revenue. They've kind of figured out product market fit. They're scaling, they're adding people, which means they're going to be adding tools on top of that, right? They're trying to solve all the good problems of too many customer service inquiries, always being out of stock of inventory, cash flow, trying to get more advanced analytics and insights. These are problems that technology now solves for us really nicely. And so, and we know the landscape very well. And so we're able to kind of make some really easy recommendations, suggestions, and really get them moving in the right direction in a very short period of time. And of course, we do all that for free. So it's a big win-win on the merchant side. Yeah, so that's kind of what we do, helping merchants find tools. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And, when you think of tools, there's a lot of different categories, right? Sales acquisition, you have, shipping, like you said. I want to really focus on one area during this talk. I think, from my opinion, at least, or from my perspective, it's something that has been a huge pain point for a lot of e-commerce companies, which is proper data analytics. I'm not just going to say data analytics, but really proper data analytics to understand what's going on in their business. And, I know that you specialize with e-commerce and e-commerce apps. When we think about data analytics, we could be just kind of at the beginning level of, paid acquisition marketing, but I think there's a lot more to data analytics. So, just from the beginning, how does a business know, when it's ready to start investing in data analytics and, why it's worth investing in?
Yeah. And I think the first thing is everyone's kind of collecting data, or at least should be collecting data. I suppose, the more, let's say, offline brick and mortar and stuff like that, the less organized and maybe even the less important you feel collecting data on your guests are. Just like as a weird off-topic example, like a hairdresser might not be collecting a lot of data on their clients, but the truth is a hairdresser or a hair salon or something like that could probably benefit from well-organized data set in a CRM of their clients, what type of haircuts they get, styles, maybe even pictures of their hair after they're done. Could you imagine a nice, well-organized database there, right? And understanding how frequently, they're coming up, like over the last 12 months, they've got their haircut every 2 months. It's always on a Saturday. Like things like this could be really interesting in predicting the future of a business like that. But, and that's just one random example, right? But in most businesses, so the question is, you can't find, answers of that if you don't start like kind of organizing and keeping your data. So like the very first and foremost thing is like, what are you doing to organize and keep data points? What data points might be of interest to you in the future that you should consider collecting now? Right. And so that's one of the first things to think about when you're thinking about how data can eventually impact your business. Maybe you're not at that stage yet. You haven't like started paid ads or something along those lines. So you don't really necessarily care about cost of acquisition. Sometimes people only calculate cost of acquisition after they start paid advertising. Why is that? We have cost of acquisition prior to that, right? But it's yeah. So that's kind of maybe before we even get started. Something to think about is how can you collect data before it becomes valuable to you. Then the second kind of, or maybe also give you the two kind of important truths of marketing and data analytics as a whole, kind of related to that. First one is if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? So meaning like if you don't know what your cost of acquisition is, you can't lower it because you don't really know if it's raising or lowering because you don't know. If you don't understand, the success of email marketing in your business, right? You don't know how much ROI or revenue is coming from that channel. You won't know if the next email you sent is better or worse than the last one, and so forth and so on. And we'll get into maybe later on what better or worse even means, because that can be ambiguous at times. And then the second most important thing to understand is we're collecting, organizing, and then eventually kind of staring at, graphs and charts and all these kinds of things that data presents to us in true analytics fashion, right? Is that it doesn't matter if you stare at the graph, but you don't do anything, then it doesn't really help your business, right? So data analytics is the process of organizing that data and informing decisions. But it's ultimately going to be, sometimes the decision is we're going to keep doing the same thing. That was boring report. Sometimes people are just looking at data to pat themselves on the back, really not even trying to inform decisions. That's not really data analytics. That's just mindless self-indulgence, let's call it, right? So we want to make sure that we're actually creating a report, creating an analysis that gives us some actionable insights that allows us to change what could be a critical decision in our business. And obviously, we want to focus on the more important critical questions or decisions or unknowns. So a lot of times you want to focus on the unknown variables inside the business and really try to get at what you should do to maybe make them more known or increase metrics through understanding the unknown a little bit better, right? And so those are the two most important truths of it. And so once we kind of agree that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, and you can't just stare at charts, you actually have to take action on your data. That helps set the premise on, when and how to invest in that. So then the most important thing to probably consider is if I have, it's kind of obvious, but the bigger your business and the bigger your data set, the more actionable insights you're likely to kind of get out of it, right? So a $1 million business can maybe make $5, $10, $15,000 decisions with some good analytics. $100 million business might be able to make $1 million, $5 million, $10 million decisions with good data analytics in their business. And so each business needs to understand that this is a lever that's applicable to the size of the business. It grows with the business. And that's one of the reasons you actually want to start keeping your data early, is because if you have early data sets, it will help you later on when the business is bigger. Might not be as important now when the business is smaller, but it can be better leveraged at a later time when you have a larger budget and larger revenue and all that stuff. So understanding that kind of sets you up for the idea of how much you should be spending. And that spend comes from both the cost of tools and resources, internal and external, because at the end of the day, you have to make a decision off of the data that you're analyzing. And that decision is typically, executive director, VP, use the solo founder, whatever you want to say, running the business. And so the analyzing at a high level and making that decision is a cost. And you want to make sure that, let's say, your analyst or your data analyst or head of marketing, whoever's actually going to be in charge of creating the analysis and reports, is able to create something meaningful that you can digest and understand that allows you to make decisions in the business, good informed decisions. So let's start there. I think that kind of answers the question. Maybe I didn't get into it entirely, but yeah, I could keep going.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, let's just say, okay, we have buy-in, everybody on the team wants to be tracking data. We understand, we can't properly have omni-channel marketing. Can't properly have omni-channel marketing if we don't have proper data in. What types of data do we need, and how do we go about collecting that? Is there any type of categories that you can kind of summarize that into?
Yeah, the two obvious categories are qualitative data and quantitative data. Almost everybody starts with and focuses heavily on quantitative data. So you should know that, probably let's just say 90% of the concept of data analytics tends to talk about quantitative data. That doesn't actually mean that it's more important, because qualitative data can easily be more important, but qualitative data is messier, often has more costs at getting at. You might hire a marketing analytics firm or a research partner or something like that, or you have to talk to customers or prospective customers or the market at large, right? This is what people are doing in a room when they're asking 50 people their preferences on Coke versus Pepsi or whatever it is, right? They're trying to really understand what the why behind it. And so quantitative can often tell you the what and how, and you can see okay, we changed the copy on the website, it increased conversion rate. So you can see that quantitatively, but why? Why did this headline or image increase conversion rate? What is it, the propensity to relate to that headline? Is it that they had more fear inside, instilled in them, right? So the drivers behind the actions people take often come out in qualitative research, which is important because quantitative, leaves you with more questions often in that way. And so those are the two main parts of it. Then we might have the different kind of stages of data. We have zero, first party, second party, third party is how it generally goes. Zero party data is straight from the horse's mouth, meaning the customer told me this, right? And here's a fun analysis of this, because first party data is the customer did this essentially, right? So I'm tracking them in a one-to-one capacity on my website. This is what they purchased, etc. But if the zero party data is the customer told me this, a fun one where these things differ and it becomes obvious for you here. 1 second. Might have to cut that. Is when you ask somebody, where did you hear about us? So you might see somebody come in through a Google ad, right? And they clicked on the ad, they went to the site and they purchased. And so your marketing analytics platform will say, hey, this person came from Google Ads. But if you ask them after they purchased where they came from, they might say, a friend told me, or social media, or something else like that. I walked by your store, right? Think something that you didn't know. And so your first party data and your zero party data have a conflict there. And it's on you or a marketer, a smart analytics person to decide how to handle that conflict and attribute the source in this case. So zero party data comes straight from the customer's mouth. The other really important zero party data often collected these days come from like quizzes or surveys and feedback forms. And those often, maybe come at a mix of quantitative and qualitative. They might go in as data points into your CRM, email service provider, things like that. But they also might go to there might be a long form answer that you ask people so you can get snippets of like what they really liked, what their pain points that it's solving are. And then you might turn that qualitative data into a word board that then becomes, again, your headline or the description of the product might be changed ever so slightly in order to align with how people are feeling or why they're buying or the benefits they're getting. And so that's zero and first party. Second party data is a little trickier. That's like you told me about them. No, I always get this one wrong. Let's skip second party. No, there's not even such a thing as second party data as most people are concerned about. Third party data, I guess second party is more like from a partner, and third party data is like some sort of aggregated larger source like Facebook or Google or Experian, like, large data provider that's collecting analytics on every single household or something like that is what third party data is. So those are different types of data sources. And in a good, data analytics, let's say department of a larger organization, you should have a good collection of zero, first, and third party data. Third party data is really important for enriching some of the data points on your customers. As an example, if we've got 10,000 customers, I want to know which percentage of them are homeowners. Maybe I sell furniture, right? And I want to know if they become a homeowner, right? And maybe I can track that using third-party data sources, and it would be a perfect time to put a lot of messages in front of them if I know that they just recently became a homeowner. And that's something you can track with a lot of third-party data sources. So that's just one example. You can think about how it might change if somebody is hired or fired, and we're able to track that as a data point. If they, are having a birthday, something like that coming up, that might be zero-party data that you could ask them for. First-party data that you've collected through a form filler. Well, I guess that's zero-party data. Or third-party data that you're able to somehow get from another source. And we don't probably want to go into data and privacy concerns. That could be a whole different conversation, but I'll just kind of sum it up by saying, regardless of your stance on that issue, your data is being bought and sold over and over again in a lot of back office exchanges, and basically everybody's. I had a friend who just filled out a form for a mortgage application, and he showed me his phone. He got 45 phone calls yesterday morning from about 5 a.m. is when it started, till he showed it to me at 10 a.m. He got 45 calls because his data had been sold because he identified as a soon-to-be home buyer. And so that's a lot of, third-party data sources. But long story short, the data's there in a lot of different ways. You want to get as close from the customer's mouth as possible, but there's value in collecting third-party data as well. Once you've got it all organized, you can start to slice and dice it in a way that helps you make better decisions in your business.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing all that. I feel like the number data, right? The charts, the spreadsheets, the analytics and KPIs. I feel like that's the data that most people go towards. Maybe don't use properly, but don't go towards. I feel like not a lot of companies really go into personal conversations with customers, right? I just want to kind of dive into each of those really quick and get your perspective on, tools or avenues to use to acquire both of those. Like, do you have any preferred tools for first-party data versus zero-party data? And with the zero-party data straight from their mouth, I would say there's levels to that too. Like you have, post-purchase quizzes, but actual, planned conversation probably goes a lot more in depth and has a lot more meaning than a post-purchase quiz. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, calling somebody on the phone and talking to them can be a great way to get data. Founders, I think, forget this a lot of times. And I, especially, in the first 3 years of any business, if you're not talking to a customer at least once a week, what are you doing? Like that's you should be doing that for a while. And I've even heard of some Fortune 500 CEOs doing it in perpetuity, right? Getting it aligned and all that stuff. Some of that stuff can be outsourced or aggregated, or sometimes you just need larger data sets, which means you might turn to your customer service team, your marketing team, something along those lines. There's a ton of tools here. And the other category you forgot, so before they purchase, after they purchase, there's also before they heard of you, after they've heard of you, and a few other kind of interesting stages after they've churned from your solution, right? Like, which if it's a physical product, that could be, you set a timeline. If they don't buy from us 1 year afterwards, we might want to talk to those people. Interestingly enough, there's a I remember, oh my gosh, the guy from Profitwell, I forget his name, come to me in a second. He told me something really fun, which is the people we care the most about are 3% most loyal customers and our 3% biggest haters. You care about the two ends of the spectrum more than that'd be 94% in the middle, and listening mostly to them so that you understand what not to do and what, you do really well. So tools wise, asking questions at various stages is really important. Again, make sure that you can take action on a lot of this data. So I've seen tools like Hotjar for the prospective customer visiting a website. What is this page missing? I love that question. Very open-ended. You can fill it out in long form, right? And then say like, I couldn't find the price. I couldn't find it in my color. It could be, I don't know if this is going to work for me or not. All sorts of random things. I still don't understand what you do. Message clarity, right? So you start to understand things like that are missing from this page or in your business, and you need to go back and tackle them. Sometimes you want to listen to it and sometimes you don't. That's a whole, another tricky kind of conversation. Inquire Labs, now called Fairing, is a common post-purchase survey tool for where did you buy this? So very simple one question survey that helps with marketing attribution. And that can be important for typically larger businesses looking for, fine tuning their attribution model. Octane AI is probably in e-commerce one of the leading kind of quiz tools out there. And there are dozens of different solutions like that. You also could use things like Typeform and all that stuff. But I think what's really cool is when you have a quiz that first sends the data points into your CRM. That's very important. Don't want it in a standalone data silo, which we could have a whole different conversation on data silos and data lakes and data warehouses, right? But and then secondly, being able to take actionable insight based on their results and giving them like personalized product recommendations right then and there is another really like valuable thing for any kind of online or e-commerce seller, I would say. So those are a handful of the tools that maybe collect data at a few different stages. Hotjar is also known for heat mapping, which is more first-party data is what we would call it, right? So kind of seeing how they're viewing the screen, what they're clicking on, what they're not. You can even map people's on-site customer journey and things like that. So there's there can be a lot of value in that as long as you've got the right people to make the analysis. There's a lot of summarizing there. There's a lot of work to be done. I wouldn't say it's instantly plug and play, but at least gets you set up with possibly uncovering some insights and making some changes in the business.
Yeah, and I keep hearing you say one recurring thing, which is, making sure that you can take action on the data that you're collecting. From my perspective, one thing that I've seen time and time again is marketers can get lost in the data and forget that there's people behind the numbers and that there is, reason behind what is happening outside of just how can we optimize this ad platform or how can we, change the structure of this web page or things like that, right? I think that's a common mistake that can happen because you forget about, the messaging behind your business, the offer behind your business, the things that were really attracting customers and make it, interesting. So that's one. But what would you say are some of the most common mistakes marketers make when it comes to data testing, analytics?
Yeah, and I think probably the person listening right now is everyone's familiar, I think, at some level at some concept of analytics or analysis of my own business. But the where people go wrong is it's really in using data to support your decisions rather than using your decisions to support the data or letting the data maybe even drive the whole thing for you is really what it is. So sometimes you come into a conversation as, the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. If you're like the CMO, CEO, or even the director, VP of marketing for your organization, you want things done your way because of some prior experience or something like that, right? Some past knowledge or to make it easier for your daily life, right? You're generally you want good outcomes in the business, but you might be doing it in a way that is not optimal simply because you have this, let's say, pre-existing opinion or position. And so when you use data to try and back your position, it's instead of letting the data uncover what its position is, if that makes sense, right? Like to uncover if this thing actually increased conversion rate or not. So like here, like in a fun example, I've talked to lots of brands about product imagery on their e-commerce stores, because generally the white background is not the highest converting image. It's usually some sort of lifestyle or action shot. And then when I tell them this, they're like, okay, we'll just change everything to lifestyle or action shots. I'm like, well, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying go test it and let the data inform what it improves on your site. And then other brands will tell me, well, we just have to have this type of background because everything needs to match and be clean and branded in this way. And I'm like, so you're telling me that your brand is inhibiting a positive customer experience? Because brand is like, where's the value, right? Where's the importance of this brand concept? And also maybe you can actually go through through brand and increase conversion rate, meaning it can still be within some sort of strict brand guidelines, but also follow some basic principles that increase conversion rate, right? So a lot of people, this is just the way things are. We have to copy this directly from our manufacturer. They have some pre-existing condition where it's like, okay, these things, what would we, if we know that we can like extract some information from the data, and say convincingly that we should make this big change, like what would it take in the organization to do it? An example from when I was in-house at a beauty box subscription, on our homepage, we had 4 purchase options. It was a 1 product beauty box. Every month you'd get 5 kind of unknown products sent to you. And so there's only one thing you could buy. It was the box, but you could buy it monthly, every 3 months, every 6 months, or every year. And obviously you kind of get discounts when you buy out a few months, right? So they put that on the homepage as a giant box with 4 options. My hypothesis, if we remove that and just have 1 box on the homepage, it'll increase conversion rate. I wasn't given permission to run this test, first of all, but because they said, well, we have to sell the annual, we have to sell this, it'll impact all these other things in the business. And I said, well, I'm not sure if that's true, but I bet we can increase overall conversion rate by just moving this box to the second page, which does not affect like they can still buy it. You're just not showing it on the first page. You're letting them hit the buy now button on the first page. And there's only 1 buy now button, as opposed to giving them choice paralysis. So I was able to create and run a test that proved that this basically increased conversion rate by about $1 million a month in revenue. Showed it to the executive team. They said, no, we can't do it. All right, so completely shut down, letting the hippos drive the decision-making process, not understanding really how this decision seemed very arbitrary. Their reasoning was because they needed people to buy these larger subscription boxes. They needed certain retention metrics to stay true. And I said, I was pretty sure we could do both at the same time, right? One thing can just lead to the other. And so yeah, I have a disdain for hippos, essentially, is where I'm going with this, right? Can we can we test things, prove it, and then let the data drive the decision-making process? And when our opinions, our preconceived notions compete with that, then kind of ask why, or how can we do both at the same time? Can we try it out? Can we test it? And what is the value, or what are the missed opportunities by sticking to arbitrary brand guidelines when we think we have, another $1 million a month in revenue just sitting there for our business? I think we'd all like $1 million a month more in revenue for our businesses, right? So that's like something I just want to kind of really dwell on, and to the CMOs that maybe, are listening, and like, be honest with yourself on how much decision-making you're actually using data to back your opinion, and how much you're adjusting your opinion strategy, and hopefully, even removing your opinion from the conversation, and letting data dictate what is done in the business, and being more of the arbiter of that data, and helping decide, what our biggest opportunities are based on the data, and prioritizing, against other metrics. And that brings me to kind of the second point, is like, what metric are we optimizing for is always the question. And that's where a CMO, or in, this example I was saying, they care about lifetime value, and they care about these other risks that might come to the business. Maybe if they're going to sell the company, it's not going to be as valuable if we don't have as many annual subscribers or something like that, right? So there's other risks associated there. So the second kind of thing is, what do we care about the most? In general, there's 3 major metrics that every company should be optimizing for. Tons of sub metrics that each individual department might optimize for to leverage this main metric. But the main metric is, or you can either increase the number of customers, you can increase revenue, or you can increase profit. That's it. Those are the only 3 things. You can only optimize for one of them at a time. Typically, they do have competing interests, even though sometimes you might get lucky and optimize for 2, but almost never can you optimize for all 3 at the same time. It's kind of obvious, but like the lower the number of customers, sorry, I'm getting blurry here. I don't know why. I'm trying to unblur myself. Maybe if I step back. All right. Hey, it worked. Sorry. So, the number of customers, you give your product away for free, you'll get infinity customers, kind of like kind of a reverse curve kind of graph. But of course, you'll be broke and out of money in no time. Unless you're ChatGPT, then apparently you can give your product away for free, get millions of customers, and figure out how to make money later because you're backed by a massive company. But anyways, revenue is usually somewhere in the middle, right? You need a reasonably priced product that sells well, but it has to make money on every sale in order to maximize revenue. And then profit typically is your highest priced product. And of course, everything kind of swings in between there. So having the executive suite tell all the departments what you're optimizing for across those 3 metrics, that one decision metric is really important. You also have things like customer experience and value, right? That are a little bit maybe less tangible, but also should be optimized for in between, or maybe they don't the better the customer experience, the more profit we'll have because the higher the lifetime value, and we can see the next 3 to 5 year future where we keep retention high and cost of acquisition low, then profit will go up. So each of these little levers, they all mess with each other in some ways. You can increase conversion rate, but that might decrease lifetime value, right? You might get a lower quality customer, something along those lines. You can increase average order value, but that might ultimately decrease lifetime value, believe it or not. So things can be competing with each other, and you have to understand what you're actually trying to optimize for, especially from a marketing technology standpoint. When you're trying to make a decision, do we want to increase referral coefficient? How will that affect, will that lower cost of acquisition, which therefore increases profitability? Leads me, all right, really quick off topic rant here, since you didn't ask, you gave like one question. I'm just ranting here, but what was I going to say? Referral coefficients and conversion rate are 2 really interesting aspects of the business where they compound revenue, meaning for every $1 more you make like a percentage more of revenue, right? And so think about it like this: like if you're let's say if you're an e-commerce seller, you sell everything through your online store, conversion rate goes up by 1%, and you make $10,000 this month. That means you make $11,000 next month. And if you increase any other acquisition metric, like you increase your Google ad spend or organic traffic or influencers, then that 1%, or sorry, I said 11,000, but I mean 10,100, I guess. But stay with me here. It'll increase, that lever metric will increase by the compounding effect of conversion rate optimization increasing. Same with referral rate or word of mouth marketing kind of components in a business, right? Because if you get 100 customers this month and your referral coefficient goes up from 5% to 10%, you're now going to get 110 customers instead of 105 customers next month with the same input. And so it's compounding. And so there are certain metrics or levers in the business that you should be thinking on. Is this compounding, incremental, or one-off when I'm making an analysis of this, right? So, and of course, the compounding metrics are our biggest levers for increasing whatever we're optimizing for: customers, revenue, or profit. All right, so those are 2 of the biggest, I'd say, mistakes. Again, number 1, trying to back your opinions and beliefs by being a hippo and manipulating data to support you, or perhaps even ignoring data when it doesn't support you. That could be the flip side of that. and then not knowing what metric you're actually optimizing for, and perhaps even also leaving out metrics that are impacted by your decisions. Like I said, like we might increase the metric we're optimizing for, but decrease customer experience. Here's a fun example of that, where this, I do think brand comes into play. There was an ad agency increasing conversion rate by misspelling ads, right? So they would use misspellings. It would trigger people to click on the ad more. I'm not exactly sure why, but it did work, but really did ruin brand affinity. And I think there's something to be said for what a long-term effect of millions of people seeing, misspelled ads from you and thinking poorly about your business. Not necessarily that tangible, but there might be there would be an argument from a brand guideline side that the increase in conversion rate isn't worth the cost of the brand in a situation like that. So yeah, random off topic. So.
Yeah. And, I had a question pop up while you were talking about that. You were talking about HIPPO, let's say, higher ups, HIPPO. It could even be, maybe a CMO that is making this decision. But the question is, I've seen in companies before, normally bigger companies, they can change priority KPIs very quickly and very frequently, right? From your
quarterly, often,
or shorter.
Yeah.
What is healthy? What is a healthy focus on, prioritizing KPIs?
Yeah. I mean, we have to be thinking short and long term. This is like that's the traditional balance of a good marketing executive, especially in marketing executive in the organization, and hopefully all departments as well. The larger your bankroll, the more long term you should be thinking. So Apple probably only thinks in like 10-year terms because they have the largest bankroll in the world. Whereas, a small startup really does need to get their next customer like tomorrow, or they're going under. And of course, if they get their next customer by burning them, meaning just like suboptimal experience, crappy product, all that stuff, the business isn't really going to go very far either. So they have to be thinking a little bit further than just closing $100 sale or whatever it is, something along those lines. And so that balance between short and long term, there's no 100% answer on that. But if you know your North Star metric, which, it varies from business to business, but let's make it a more tangible financial metric, number of customers, revenue, or profit, that metric should be relatively annually fixed. So as an example, early stage businesses really need more customers. And that should result in some more revenue, but not necessarily revenue as the optimization metric, right? So the more customers you can get, the more viral you can go, the more referrals you can get, the more you can break out from being a nothing brand to a something brand, so forth and so on. And that's often why early stage companies can lose money, because they invest so heavily in getting customers, and they can leverage kind of their future potential by buying a customer and then hoping that lifetime value pans out later on, right? So often early stage we're optimizing for customers, but there is a moment in business where there can often be pivots there, and you can start making that either revenue or profit optimization. Profit optimization is often done in later stage organizations, but let's just say you're running $1 million stable company, and you're not trying to grow at 10x or 5x in the next year or something like that. You're just happy with your market the way it is and all that stuff. That might also be another good opportunity to switch to optimizing for profit. Maybe you actually make $900,000 next year instead of $1 million, but you keep an extra $100,000 to yourself by, often it's OpEx, cutting costs, reducing headcount, and or just maybe only going after the customers, right? Reducing your cost of acquisition maximum by only going after the customers that are easier to get. So, which maybe in your case, Kobe, this is a good idea, but like you could reduce ad spend. Sure, you're not going to get as many customers, but maybe there's more profitability. We're cutting this from the video. No. But of course, people often are buying ads to grow their company, and generally growth is what we're looking for. But there are moments where stagnation is okay, or it makes me happy. It's a lifestyle business choice, and I totally think it's fine to optimize for those things. So that large metric should definitely be more long term. You shouldn't be swapping that monthly, because that's going to cause turmoil in the business. Now, from a marketing executive standpoint, conversion rate optimization is often a heavy focus, and I think it's one of the highest levers. So early on, we really do want to increase conversion rate. We want to think about what we can do with our on-site experience that improves the customer experience and increases conversion rate. right? And I do want to align those two things because, again, there are ways to reduce the customer experience, increase conversion rate, but not necessarily good for the long term of the business. Once you really feel like you've pushed that needle, you'll start to feel perhaps like you're at the top of an S curve, meaning like, hey, for every dollar I put into conversion rate optimization, I'm getting less and less back. And this happens on many channels and in many cases. And so at some point you go to the top of that S curve and you say, well, let's see if we can tinker with average order value. Maybe we can do things like merchandising, right? Cross-selling and upselling, finding partners and co-marketing initiatives that increase average order value, looking for affiliate or partner offers to put in our post-purchase page or sell to our existing customers or our past customers or churn customers. Things like that. Well, actually, that's lifetime value. So some of those things, I guess, go into the lifetime value. And so maybe you optimize more for lifetime value and using the list there, which often, maybe more closely aligns with profit maximizing as opposed to customer or revenue maximizing. So, the long story short, the answer might be when you feel like you're at the top of what you considered your most valuable S curve and you see the dollars you're putting in getting less and less out, that would be a good time to change KPIs. That shouldn't be happening weekly or monthly. I think organizations that are changing those types of things weekly or monthly, like making big swing changes, like as an example, like now we're going to focus on loyalty. Like, and then next month we're going to focus on acquisition channels and scaling those. Like, I think those are should be more quarterly initiatives, maybe even biannual or annual initiatives. But there are certain small tasks where it's like, oh, we want to get more reviews. Okay, like, yeah, we can spend a couple of weeks or a month trying to tweak our review number or our referral coefficient number, or the number of loyalty points used by our customer number, as just kind of random examples, or the number of products purchased or our purchase frequency number, right? There are some moments where you might just try and, if you find a lever, try and improve that KPI, but it's not necessarily swinging the fundamental focus of the entire department. It's more like, hey, I think I've got like a quick win that we can execute on, and so go and do it and see if it works.
I got you. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I know you mentioned Chat GPT earlier. If you spend, at least 20 minutes on LinkedIn every week, you're going to see probably 5 to 10 posts about AI, and it'll probably be that way. But right, everybody's buzzing about AI. Some AI, may be real. Some of it is, just fancy tech shrouded as AI, but that's another discussion. But my question for you is, are there any tools out there right now that you think are currently making an impact? And, where do we see marketing with AI in the next 3 to 5 years, or analytics with AI in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's an exciting time. And so specifically around analytics, since that's the main root of this conversation, the past, present, and future of analytics is worth discussing. And maybe this is even the past, present, and future of business in general. But definitely with analytics in the past, up until 1990s, maybe 2000s, all data analytics was organizing data sets, deciding what metrics to compare on, putting it like up on a screen, and then having somebody explain to you what that does, right? So the humans had to explain why this graph means this thing. And side note, because I haven't said it yet, comparative metrics are what you want to be looking at. We have, stroking my ego metrics, like, hey, revenue went up month over month. That doesn't explain why, how, or what levers we can pull to it. You need to look at revenue to average order value, revenue to profitability, revenue to new customers, revenue to by channel breakdown, or other things are. So we need comparative metrics in order to really make an analysis of things. Try to avoid one metric graphs if there are no comparative metrics. So in the past, we had to analyze the data ourselves and convince our bosses that this is what should happen because of it. And of course, opinions sneak into that kind of thing, right? And we also present the graphs that support our opinions a little bit more, and we put the graphs that don't align with our opinions back into the wayside. Now we have a lot of predictive analytics solutions out there, and that's because we're collecting a lot of data. Big ERPs and great analytics tools are collecting data from a lot of sources. They can tell you, hey, if you increase ad spend by 5%, you might increase return on ad spend, or you might increase number of new customers by this much, revenue by that much, right? And your cost of acquisition will largely remain steady. Great. That's phenomenal to know. And it uses really, might call it advanced, but it's kind of simple. I don't know. uses basic machine learning, looking at the past data, regression analyses, things that you could hire somebody to do 10 years ago. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to be a math genius to do this. The AI just does it, tells you what to do, or at least recommends some decent options. Not all options in business have been kind of sorted down to this, but we've got good predictions now coming from AI, more and more predictions now also like on all sides of the business. So the next 3 to 5 years where this AI really comes in is not only in better predictions, but also in the execution of what they think will work. So if the AI can make the changes to my website, my homepage, ChatGPT can rewrite my landing page 18 different ways based on its own learnings and understandings. And then we can look at the traffic, see the conversion rate goal. If conversion rate is what we're optimizing for, then we can see which one works. That can feed back into its own algorithm so the next landing page it generates is going to be more accurate, right? And it's not, it can be any old landing page generator. It doesn't have to be based on ChatGPT or OpenAI. But you kind of get the picture of how humans don't really need to be in the mix. And even by adding a human, you'll slow down the process. You'll make it less data driven. And you're as long as it's, let's say humans set the boundaries is where we're going very soon here. So humans are just going to say, don't use misspelled words, don't cuss, things like that. Otherwise, have at it AI and see what you can do. And the results should be really interesting, I think, because first of all, this will displace human resources. It will, in fact, in some ways displace the media agency. The media agency is more about setting the guidelines. You'll need less people to run a great ad agency. You'll need fewer people. There's still value there, but it'll be on the higher level strategic and running the tools. And that'll be true inside the organization as well. Creative departments are definitely going to start to disappear. Content and writing operations, you don't need a team of writers. You maybe just need one editor today, and that editor will eventually be replaced too. And then and so a lot of different departments are going to be under attack. And really, the same thing that happened over the last 10 years, Shopify especially democratized the ability to start an e-commerce business. Made it so easy. You didn't need developers $10,000, $50,000 to get off the ground. Oberlo and drop shipping sites and Amazon also made it easier. All these things democratizing e-commerce. Now there's another level of democratization coming because you'll need fewer and fewer people to even run these businesses, which make for really interesting elements of scale. Even things like merchandising. I mean, customer service will be fully automated very soon here. Merchandising your products can be selected by AI. Again, just put products up, see if it fits. And it could even be false door solutions. You don't even have the product. If there's enough demand for it, then go make that purchase order for 10,000 units. A human doesn't even need to be involved in this decision. You just put the money in the bank account, and you set your thresholds, right, and your risk tolerance and a few other metrics. And I mean, I see a future within 5 years where you can. I mean, literally, you should be able to put $1 million in a bank account and then set like 25 conditions basically. And AI could probably find the right products to sell to the right people on the right channels. It can write your co-marketing partnership emails. It can, right? It can find you new partners to work with. And on the other side, the partners will be using AI to accept those requests. Like where does the human need to be, for a lot of these interchanges? Just kind of managing the tools and the technology behind it and keeping, in the short term, keeping AI from running off the guardrails. And in the long term, the AI will create its own guardrails based on that feedback. And then it's just like, everything's like, that's the nth level utopia, full democratization. And I don't think we're very far away from it. I think we're 15 to 20 years total towards that nth level. And we're just going to keep working our way towards it. In the next 3 to 5 years, it's really, the brands that get it and use predictive AI to understand merchandising, advertising, channel marketing, attribution, on-site conversion rate, product imagery, customer service. The ones using that are going to succeed. The ones not using it because they have antiquated business practices or because they couldn't adopt as quickly or because there's a HIPPO that says, that says that we can't use AI in our customer service because it'll degrade our brand. Those people are gonna fall flat because their costs are going to bloat. Their competitors are going to beat them out of the market.
Yeah, I saw something on LinkedIn recently that said AI is not going to replace marketers. It's going to replace marketers that don't use AI.
I love it. Yeah. And I think that's, and it's also giving you it's giving you superpowers so that you can do 10x the work at, at the same amount of time. So, which could be good for, the future of the 5-hour workday, the 4-hour work week. A lot of companies are embracing that. And maybe we do get more value in less time and just need our brains for the fully strategic things at the highest level.
With implied consistency from the AI as well.
Yes, and there's definitely problems. We're not in a perfect utopia yet, but it's growing so fast. Where just 3 to 5 years ago, if you and I were having a conversation about using some sort of AI chatbot tool to fully automate customer service, I would say it's going to go off the rails. It's going to miss 100 different things. You need to create rules and macros and have humans oversee it. But now it's like, I'm pretty sure like 1 in 1,000 cases would have a problem, and then it can just escalate when it needs to. So I would say you could almost fully automate AI customer service these days. And I know a lot of help desks are moving that way.
Yeah, 1 in 1,000. I mean, I have a problem with support every time I call AT&T or Verizon, like 1 out of every 2 or 3 times. So 1 in 1,000 sounds a lot better than.
Yeah, and you're talking to a real person, which is a problem. Yeah. And it's slow, and and they're going through the same prompts that could be fully automated, and they're involved in legacy systems. How do you fire 10,000 workers because their job just got replaced by Chat GPT?
Yeah. That's going to be, that'll be different. That'll be very big. I mean, so, if you had to summarize everything we talked about, right? We talked about analytics, getting started with it, the importance of the buy-in. We talked about different types of qualitative, quantitative data. If you had to summarize all of this discussion into one mindset, what should marketers have when they're thinking of data analytics?
Yeah, I think the first thing is being honest with yourself on whether you are letting data drive the decisions or your opinion. And I'll be honest with myself, I don't think data drives a lot of my decisions either. I think that I can stand here on my high horse and preach it, but I'm not necessarily making all of my business decisions based on data. I'm doing it more based on feel and opinion. And that's, I'm in a smaller market. I'm in a different industry than, let's say, an e-commerce seller. If I was in e-commerce, I would definitely be doing it a lot different and more significantly more data driven. I'm in more of so my market's just a little bit different, but at the end of the day, I could absolutely be doing a better job to make more data driven decision making myself. So it's not that it's going to end your business by not making data driven decisions. It's that you're giving yourself a handicap, right? Like why am I giving myself a handicap by not incorporating like best practices in analyzing my customer base, asking them questions that help me get qualitative and quantitative data, and using this to get more customers and grow my business. So, I think that's the first most important part. And then avoiding opinion, hippos, internal politics, things like that, and is kind of the follow up to that. And perhaps I would say recognizing when you have to go with your opinion is also maybe the other biggest takeaway. And then it's like, well, I had to go with my opinion because I didn't have an answer from the data. How can I use what we're going to do as a way to gather data and make a more informed decision the next time we have to come around and make a decision? Like I had to launch e-commerce day, I think is where we got to at least see each other face to face. And I had to launch this live event, not knowing if people would show up and all of these things, right? And so that's my first time of getting a lot of data. So we collected a lot of data and made really important decisions on what we're going to do next year from that first instance. So that was one of those opportunities where data isn't really going to present good decision making. We just have to take a risk, and there's some precursor things like, do I know I can get enough people there? Do I have enough sponsors to pay, to reimburse? Can I at least look at some profit, expectations and cost expectations? So there's data there to collect, but you ultimately make a very unknown decision. And then on your next kind of iteration of it, you can make better informed decisions. That's just one example.
Okay. And for anyone listening that is at the stage of figuring out, what they want to do in the marketing industry, people just getting started, maybe fresh out of school, maybe they, are reading books, didn't go to school for it. What would you say the role or roles are that are going to be in the highest demand in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, we already kind of said like, hey, AI is going to displace a whole bunch of jobs. So you have to be really careful at, like like lower level jobs today are going to become extinct. There is no milkman, there's no icebox runner person. What's that?
Checkout line of the grocery store, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You should just be able to walk on out, right? So the checkout clerks are going to disappear. And the same is true in the lower level white collar jobs, but it's not necessarily bad to start there today while they still exist. Just, thinking about a trajectory, it has to be centered around strategy, running AI tools, and understanding the technology, the underlying technology that is going to be existing for the next 5, 10, 15 years, and being sure that you can leverage that to run various aspects of any business. That is definitely, the first and foremost thing that you want to be doing if you're doing any, content creation, creative creation, running ads yourself, those types of things. Think about how that eventually transitions into running the tools that run that, and also be, look at and be honest with yourself about how that will work in the future. Maybe you'll join the tech startup that creates that technology solution, right? And by the way, it's also getting easier to launch tech companies with no code, low code solutions. You can now do Chat GPT to Figma so that you can create the design mockups and then integrate that into the front end instantly. So like in the near future, you'll be able to create an app for almost anything, which is really cool. But both on the e-commerce and SaaS side of things, this leads me kind of to the second point, which is that there is big opportunity perhaps on the horizon further than in the past with entrepreneurship. We talked about how Shopify democratized e-commerce, right? The internet democratized a lot of e-commerce and running your own business. It's likely that that's going to happen again with it even like lower barrier to entry over the next few years. It could be possible that everyone's running their own business. We also have the gig economy and other things that mean that you can plug and play into others. Web3 also changing those kinds of things. So understanding business fundamentals, entrepreneurship, things like bankroll management, and looking for niche opportunities where a business could exist where one doesn't is going to be even more powerful than ever. And robots will not replace us for that for the foreseeable future. It'll take a little bit longer for them to completely take all of it away from us. So I think keeping your eyes on those things, reading general business books, business strategy, large business marketing strategy books is going to be really helpful in staying plugged into the industry so that you know what's changing and what's not. There's also a very good podcast, this one, of course, and so many others. And so just keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry is gonna keep you relevant and keep you employed.
And, staying in the pulse, that's connecting with people like you as well, right? So tell us where people can connect with you or learn more about you and your business.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so you can, my name's spelled kind of funny, but it's Derric Haynie at LinkedIn. Happy to connect. If you head over to EcommerceTech.io, you can browse if you're in e-commerce, especially for Shopify merchants, but really all e-commerce merchants. You can go browse our directory, 260 plus tools that we've reviewed independently, and try to understand a little bit more of the ecosystem in a lot of the major categories. And I'm also on Twitter. I'm twitter.com/6peppers, SIX, all spelled out, peppers. Don't ask, it's a long story.
I'm curious. I'll save that for the next in-person event about that. But awesome, Derric. Well, look, I appreciate everything today. A lot of good insights on analytics and how we can get buy-in, how we can use it, how most importantly, we can make decisions based off of it. Appreciate everything you brought today, and thanks for joining the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.